Hey everybody, this is Charles Max Wood. I just wanted to talk to you really briefly about JS Remote Conf. We just picked speakers. Things are looking really good, and we're really excited to cover a broad range of topics for JavaScript developers. So if you're looking to learn things about Node.js, about becoming a better developer, about deployment, about mobile development, and much more about JavaScript, then come check us out, jsremoteconf.com. You can also find it by going to devchat.tv/conferences and then picking the conference you want. We have last year's recordings there. We have this year's conference coming up, so make sure you get your ticket, and we'll see you there. Hey folks, this is Charles Max Wood from JavaScript Jabber. This is going to be our first My JS story, which is a new segment that we're putting together for the show. I actually recorded yesterday, I recorded one of these where I just kind of answered the questions myself, and it was terrible. So we're starting with Keith instead. Anyway, I'm a little self-conscious, so I didn't like the way it went. But anyway, we're basically going to get in. We're going to ask a handful of questions. I'm going to be asking our guests pretty much the same questions. And then I'll also be asking questions based on their answers to kind of tease out the answer or tease out more information about what they have to say and what their story is. You're getting a little bit more of an explanation this time because this is the first one you get. But yeah, we have some scheduled with some pretty interesting people. So stay tuned for these people that you're probably going to be interested in hearing. I have appointments to do these with Michael Rogers, who maintains Node.js, as well as Isaac Schluter from NPM, and a bunch of other people who are really cool. And of course, Keith, who is also awesome. All right, so we had Keith on episode 222 of JavaScript Jabber, and you talked to us about Nodal.
Yes, I did.
So that was fun. But we're going to get into where you came from. And the first question I'm asking primarily because I know there are a lot of new people out there, and they think, oh, you've got these people like Keith that work on awesome projects like Nodal, and I just never get there. And I'm like, Keith was a new programmer once. So Keith, how did you get started with programming?
Yeah. So I actually started programming when I was pretty young. I started programming around probably about the age of 10 or 11 years old, but I didn't start necessarily headed in the right direction. It was fun, and there was a lot of experimentation. I actually started with Visual Basic 5. So you won't hear any developers really talking about Visual Basic nowadays in anything except for negative terms. But my father was a software engineer, and I was a little bit of a handful to take care of on weekends, I think, when it was his responsibility to look over me, and had tons of energy, but I was really into computers and like messing around with stuff on the screen. So he sat me down and showed me how to write a few lines of code in Visual Basic and how to make the background of the form flash and change colors. And I was just mesmerized, like right away. And he basically just left the code open, didn't really tell me how to do much, and just let me sit with it. And a couple hours later, he came back, and I had just made my first simple application, I think, that was literally just this form that was rapidly changing background colors on a timer, and I was so pleased with myself. And that's kind of how it all started. And then on weekends from that point out, I'd be really itching to just sit in front of a computer and play around with Visual Basic. And it kind of stayed that way, just as like a kind of toy sort of thing for a couple of years. But that was the initial like origin story of when I kind of wrote my first couple lines of code.
Right, so I lead in with everyone starts somewhere, don't get discouraged, and we got the child prodigy on the show. My goodness.
To be honest, I think a lot of programming, no matter what age you get involved at, a lot of it's just about experimentation and like kind of the joy of creation and just seeing what you can build. I don't think there's like an age requirement on really just being able to hop in, write a few lines of text and tell a computer what to do, and then just be amazed that all of a sudden you're controlling this machine in only a few short seconds and seeing how powerful that is as a concept. So
that's so true. And it's funny that you bring that up because one of my neighbors, who my wife is really close friends with, she's been going through Free Code Camp, which is a free online JavaScript tutorial system, and that's what's lighting her up. So she talks to my wife, and then she's like, "Oh, I learned this cool thing about JavaScript," or "I'm loving coding," and that's what it is. It's that love of creation and just that excitement over that. And so I definitely see that. But she's in her 30s. And
oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I talk to people every day that are just starting to get into code, and a lot of people are starting with JavaScript, right? So that's what's kind of fundamentally amazing. It actually took me a while to get into JavaScript, and I suppose we'll move into that sort of chat as well. But what's awesome about JavaScript is that it's so ubiquitous at this point, that anybody can really, I mean, all you need is a web browser, right? You can open up the console on your web browser in like a couple, I don't know, anybody can do this, and start writing code and seeing their creations, really their ideas come to fruition. And that's sort of amazing. So you don't need to be some sort of prodigy or anything like that. I wouldn't consider myself anything close to that. I was just lucky that I had a father that introduced me to it young. But anybody can really get involved, and that's what's kind of awesome about the entire JavaScript community as a whole. So
yeah, absolutely. So you did. I shouldn't send the questions ahead of time, and then you won't foreshadow. But anyway, yeah. So you're writing VB5, and fast forward a few years. How did you wind up getting into JavaScript?
Yeah, so JavaScript, my relationship with JavaScript is kind of interesting. So I didn't really get so I mean I've been writing code for a while anyway, or had been throughout my teenage years, etc. But I didn't really start getting involved with JavaScript until I was until I was in my 20s. I spent a lot of early development, even in web development, working on PHP, MySQL, that sort of stack. And I kind of view JavaScript as like a joke, really. I mean, I think a lot of developers, especially people who are hardcore backend, you'll hear them say these sorts of like overused tropes, like, oh, JavaScript's like a toy or whatever. I kind of thought the same thing. When I started with, the first time I ever touched JavaScript, it was like this toy that you used to generate like ASCII clocks that followed your mouse around the screen, or people used it for like soft form validation once in a while. And it wasn't really like a full, I don't know, like people didn't use it to build applications. Now, when I was in my 20s and I started, I took a brief hiatus kind of from coding to work on a biochemistry degree, actually. That's what I went to school for. And then when I came out of college, I kind of like reignited my love for programming, and I started playing around a lot more with JavaScript. And this was right around the time, it was right before single-page applications really became a thing. But it was after the Node.js revolution had kind of started. And I started playing around with JavaScript in the browser, and I realized that for the first time, like at least since the couple of years I had really played with JavaScript, that JS was now able to create like fully fledged applications in your browser. It was fast enough. Things like Canvas had just been introduced, that you could literally do things like game programming in your browser. Now, the types of programming I'd done really early on was like game programming in Visual Basic. I used DirectX and stuff, and C++, OpenGL, and all of a sudden seeing these like graphics APIs and JavaScript, I was like, wow, I can actually build amazing, true client-side applications in JavaScript. And that kind of just blew the doors wide open. I was like, this is where I'm going to focus all of my energy from now on. And obviously the popularity of Node.js meant that I only had to focus on JavaScript on both front end and back end. I could kind of use it as this like universal language for development. And that was super, super exciting. And from that point, I built a few small applications. I fell in love with it. And then I've been pretty much a hardcore JavaScript developer since then. Probably the last 6 or 7 years.
It's funny that you bring that up, because you talked about sort of the Node.js revolution, and at the same time you talked about how both the capabilities, I guess, and the tools for the browser got to the point where you could do the things that you wanted to do. And what I found, because my journey, at least to that point, mirrors yours in the sense that I was doing Ruby on Rails, and the front end, was just like, well, jQuery, but, I did most of my work on the back end because it was much easier. And then all of a sudden we got these power tools, right? So somebody invented a drill and, backbone. And so, oh, wow, jQuery is a whole lot less painful to deal with because I can organize it these ways. And then I can start pulling in things like underscore or Lodash or whatever. And then it's like you get these big libraries for the canvas, or you get Angular or Ember or React. And so we've gotten these tools that make it possible for us to do the things that we dreamed about. And I can kind of see that's, okay, now I can do this, and I can do it in a place where it's very visual.
Yeah, for sure. And that visual feedback, I think is something that's amazing as well, right? Because like when I was developing web pages and websites as a teenager, I was doing, the flavor of the day was you generate server-side rendered HTML, right? And then you just spit it out to the client, and then you just have this static web page. People started using Ajax and stuff, and for a little bit of dynamicism, I guess. But that was pretty much just how you did things. And then when JavaScript really got to the point where people were like, well, it kind of heralded the single page app kind of revolution. Yeah. When JavaScript got to the point where like, oh no, client-side templating is actually like, you can do this very, very quickly and easily. Just the visual feedback you get is so quick and so awesome. And like I said, it reminded me of that application development from my earlier years in like DirectX, OpenGL sort of thing, where like you just get that immediate visual feedback and you just feel so good about it. There's like, we're talking about the rewarding of coding, and to see something visually is like this next level on top. It's not like only did I accomplish something, it's like, wow, stuff is moving around on my screen. I think it's why a lot of us really get enamored with things like game development early on as well, because of that visual feedback.
So I'm gonna sidetrack. I'm gonna ask a different question.
Sure.
And then we'll go to the regular third question. But game development in the browser. We see people doing it. I remember, I think it was Cut the Rope or Angry Birds, or anyway, one of those got written basically with JavaScript so that it could run in a Chrome plugin. And it's like you can really build real games with JavaScript. And I'm kind of curious because, we have the business applications that I think most of us get paid to build. But, can you talk a little bit about how you got into that game building world in JavaScript and what that actually means?
Sure. So I didn't delve too far into like hardcore game development in JavaScript, but it's definitely what opened my eyes to JavaScript as like a full application layer. What I started in was really before WebGL. WebGL is still like we talk about things are a year old or like it's old, but even WebGL and the power of WebGL was pretty brand new. And when I got back into JavaScript, WebGL wasn't a thing that you could really do anything with, but HTML Canvas was. And so the first thing I actually tried to do, and when I realized like game development and that sort of thing was tenable, was I tried to build almost like an operating system in the browser and like my own windows generated with like HTML Canvas.
You were the only one.
Oh yeah, I know. Everybody was doing this, right? So it was, but that was exciting, and the performance we were getting, like 60 frames per second in HTML Canvas. I was like, wow, like literally, this is awesome. This was the game development platform I was kind of looking for when I was a kid. Now, I very quickly got sidetracked. I think when I was a kid, I was less concerned with like social media and that sort of thing. So I was like, I'm just going to build a game. Now, coming into it in my 20s, just coming out of college, obviously the social networking craze was huge. I'm like, how can we build some sort of social type thing with like all these cool bells and whistles, and that's where I headed in that direction. But there's been a ton of innovation in the game development space. WebGL. I've always wanted to get back into like HTML5, WebGL game development. It's just my career has taken me on a kind of like not even adjacent path, like very, very different path than that. But it's definitely an exciting space that's like ripe for innovation. I think WebGL is truly the future of rendering on the web. And players like Famous, actually, that's not a lot of people talk too much about anymore. Players like Famous, I think they were really like pioneers in the WebGL space. And I think as we start getting more and more great developer experience tooling around, there's 3JS and like a bunch of awesome stuff that people are building great games with, right? But I think that ecosystem is only going to get bigger and better. So,
yeah. Yeah, it seems like people either go with vectors, which I think is what 3JS is mostly
Yep.
focused around, or WebGL. Yeah. So our third regular question, and I'll probably not call these out after the first couple of these interviews. But the third question is, what have you contributed or what have you done in the JavaScript community that people would know you for?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the thing that people would know me best for is why you had me on Jabbascript Jabber last time, and that's Nodal, the Node.js API framework that we. I mean, it's been around for about 2 years now, I think, since the first launch. But we did we fully documented everything and really got it out there back in January. And I think we have close to like 4,000 GitHub stars in that project, and like a lot of people are just building Node.js APIs. Very easily in a very Rails-like fashion with that. So that's probably my biggest contribution to date so far that people would know me for. I have a ton of other small, somewhat popular open source JavaScript libraries, but Nodal is definitely by far and away has taken the cake there. So
nice. So that being said, then I mean, what are you working on now? This is question number 4, folks. What are you working on now?
Yeah, so the project that I'm working on now is a hyper ambitious project called Standard Lib, and it's stdlib standardlib.com. What Standard Lib is, I mean, the almost like markety-ish tagline is we're really trying to build the standard library of the web. The serverless revolution that's been going on. If some people are hyper familiar with the space, some people aren't. But there's this serverless revolution going on, really heralded by AWS Lambda, that essentially brings this dream that I think a lot of us have had since we started coding, of going directly from code to like shipped web products without ever having to manage infrastructure. This serverless architecture is this like highly available, ultra scalable, like self-healing architecture. And what that means is just that like it essentially never goes down, right? I mean, if any of your individual units that are serving people code go down, it heals itself. So we're utilizing this to allow people and building an ecosystem really around allowing people to write these scalable services in like literally 1/10 or 100th of the time that it would normally take them, spin them up, put them online. Everything's in JavaScript right now.
Right.
So spin them up, put them online, and then really share them with the world or just use them internally. We have developer workflow tooling. Like we have this lib command line command that we use, like lib up will instantly deploy your service to the cloud, and then you never have to worry about it. It just scales, period. Mm-hmm. And then we also have this service registry, which is standard lib, which you can register your service either kind of privately for your own usage or share it with the world. We created like a markdown service that like anybody can use and interface with. And our developer community, we have over 2,500 people now. And our developer community is pretty awesome. So they're always building and innovating with pretty cool stuff. So that's where we're at.
Nice. So is the standard lib and all of the other stuff that you're working on, is that all related to your job?
Yeah, so I'm actually the founder and CEO of Polyvit, and Polyvit is responsible for Standard Lib.
Okay.
We founded the company shortly after Nodal really took off in popularity, with the idea. I mean, we've been playing in the serverless space for a while with AWS Lambda, and the goal originally was to just make Node.js APIs. Mm-hmm. Very, very easy to build, very, very easy to work with, easy to scale, using serverless architecture. And the customer feedback, like there are thousands of people using, tens of thousands at this point, using Nodal or interfacing with Nodal in some way. But the feedback we started getting from people was like, the deployment pathways that you've created for like serverless architecture and like this whole concept is like really awesome. But I don't necessarily want to have to learn all of the Nodal API framework mm-hmm. to get stuff out there in a serverless context. So do you have something better for us? And lo and behold, we said like, yeah, we'll go back to the drawing board and see what we can create here. And Standard Lib was kind of born out of that. And the response we've been getting to that has been huge. We just presented at AWS reInvent actually in my first time in Las Vegas a couple weeks ago. So that was pretty exciting. So everyone's pretty excited about this space, and I feel very fortunate to kind of be in this position. So
very cool. Yeah, the serverless architecture thing we had an episode on Jamstack, which is kind of a similar idea. And then we had Travis Tidwell on Adventures in Angular talking about their version of serverless architecture with Form.io. So it's an interesting space to be in, and just all kinds of fascinating things going on there.
Oh yeah. And what's really cool is, like, with what we've built, we get to kind of foster this developer community that's building their own cool stuff and sharing it with the world, like literally on the platform we built. So there's stuff that people have built that we didn't even think of, and some of these things are just, they look like toys at first, right? I mean, somebody built a chess service chess, you can play chess as a stateless game. So as long as you give in a board state and you give in the next move, it's literally just a state machine that tells you what the new board state is, or whether it's valid or invalid. So somebody did something like that. I was like, wow, that's pretty clever, actually. I wouldn't have thought to do something like that. So the innovation that we're getting at this level is just really cool as well.
That is really awesome. And it goes back to that whole conversation, right, where things kind of clicked for you with JavaScript because there were power tools out there that allowed you to do that thing, whatever it was that you wanted to invent. And now you're building more power tools, right? So now instead of, having drills and power saws, now you've given somebody basically a backhoe to come in and dig the foundation out for an entire new set of functionality and application on the web.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that's a great way to look at that, and I really appreciate that analogy. And it's very, very exciting to really be a part of. So
that's very, very cool. So to go ahead and start heading down the road of wrapping up, I end all of the shows with picks, and you've been on JavaScript Jabber, so you understand what picks are.
Yep.
I'll go ahead and shout a few things out first, just things that I'm going to share that I think are fun. What this means is that I have to come up with picks a lot more often than I'm used to. But so the first pick I have is the new podcast editor that I have picked up for these shows. The regular JavaScript Jabber and all of that, they're with the old editor through the end of the year. And then we'll have the new editor take those over as well. They're called Podcast Pilot, and they are really awesome. They've got a whole workflow for this stuff, and it's terrific. It's a little bit different way of doing things than I'm used to, but at the same time, I think we're going to wind up with higher quality show notes, higher quality editing. I've talked to the editor a couple of times, and he is terrific as well. And it's run by a friend of mine named Jamie J. And so, anyway, definitely check them out, Podcast Pilot. And then the other shout out that I'm going to make is, and to give you a little bit of context, I hired a business coach, and she's got me writing standard operating procedures for a lot of things. And so I've been using a system called DocuWiki to write all of my procedures in. So it's basically, here's how you set things up for a remote conference, or here's how you onboard podcast guests, or here's how you onboard a new sponsor, or things like that. So anyway, it's really great, and the wiki is it's a nice way of writing Markdown to get those standard things going. And finally, my last shout out will be for the upcoming conferences. So if you go to devchat.tv/conferences, you can see them. JavaScript JS Remote Conf is coming up in March. DevOps Remote Conf will be in January, so there's still time to buy tickets. And we've got engineers from HP and IBM. We've got the VP of Community Development from Chef, and a whole bunch of other people coming. So those are my shout outs. Keith, how about you? What do you have for us?
One of the first shout outs I want to do is to Vue.js, run by Evan Yu. Vue has really been taking over the front end development space, and to see Evan really accomplish this has been amazing. I don't think people realize. I mean, I don't know how many people realize. I think some people actually do, but Evan's been doing this like solo. He left Meteor to build Vue and to really focus full time on Vue. He has a newborn kid, and he's just I don't know how he finds the time, but he's just killing it. They have now surpassed like GitHub stars on Meteor. I'm not going to be surprised when Vue takes over and really beats out React for at least GitHub star market share. So that's pretty exciting. So like take a look at Vue.js and what Evan's doing there. If you're not using it as a front end framework, you should be. So check that out. And the shout out number 2 I want to give is actually into kind of like the voice recognition and like home tooling space. I mentioned that we were at AWS reInvent a couple of weeks ago, and we got lucky in that everybody who attended the conference got free Amazon Echo Dots. And like normally I don't play too much in the IoT space, but we set up these Echo Dots, and we were able to get like Alexa skills set up so we could just talk to the dot. Like we were able to set them up in like 10 minutes. Now we use standard lib, so there's like a little bit of a self throwback to do that.
Pro tip.
But the amount of innovation really coming out in the IoT space with like Google Home, Amazon, the Echo Dot with Alexa and stuff, it's pretty amazing. And it's like any developer just getting started with JavaScript. I mean, if they check out the tools that are available. The developer portal on AWS and Amazon's website. If they use tools like standard lib, I mean, you can get voice commands set up in your home. Literally, it took us like 10 minutes. So this stuff is like really cool, and I definitely suggest if you're like have any sort of inclination towards like hardware hacking and checking this stuff out, even if you've never done it before, because we hadn't. Literally, you can get something set up in like way less than an hour, like literally 10 minutes. So I think this stuff is really cool, and that's where I want to give out my second shout out.
I've been wanting to write some skills for the Echo. I bought one for my wife for Mother's Day, I think, and she talks to the thing all the time. And so I actually went and I got 3 Echo Dots. And so I have one in my office now, and usually I'm just telling it to play music. But, I'm putting one in the master bedroom and another one downstairs that she can just move around. So anyway, it's really, really cool stuff. And I'm really looking forward to just some of the capabilities there. So, are you still digging through log files to find errors and relying on users to tell you exactly what went wrong? Raygun Crash Reporting monitors your web and mobile applications, collecting all error and crash events that are affecting your customers. Diagnostic information about the problem is made available to your entire team instantly, including which specific users of your application have been affected. There's no need for software errors to affect your users. Head to raygun.com to see how Raygun can help you create better software. To wrap up, I just want you, if you have anything you want to plug, anything that you're working on that you think people should go check out, just real quick. I would also appreciate it if you share like your Twitter handle or something so people can go follow you there or follow you wherever you post stuff. If you don't post to Twitter, that would be awesome. Definitely
what we're working on right now that we definitely want people to check out is, like I mentioned a couple of times, standard lib. That's stdlib.com. We have this awesome developer community that's brewing. We have our own Slack channel that our developers are all active in. And we're going to be putting out a lot of exciting stuff over the holiday season, like how to instantly create single page applications on standard lib. So you have this like free, indefinitely scalable single page application like Vue.js hosting essentially layer, and also doing things like how to easily create like Alexa skills with standard lib as well. We'll be putting out a lot of material about this. So just stay tuned. And if you want to follow me, you can follow me on Twitter. My handle is Keith WHOR. I'm happy to respond to any questions that you have for me on Twitter and continue the conversation there if anybody would like to chat.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming, Keith. This has been a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to doing a lot more of these and just to capture some of that story, who you are, where you came from, and what you're about. So thanks. And this should come out next week, and it'll be great to hear it then.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much. Thanks so much for having me. I really, really appreciate it. And good luck with the rest of the interviews as well. I look forward to listening to them.
All right. Thanks.
Okay, cheers.